Hello, my name's Christopher Anatra. I'm the consciousness within the human DNA holographic avatar you know as the Quantum Businessman. Welcome, you lucid dreamwalker, seeker of knowledge, to Symphony of Realities, Act 7, Concepts, Scene 2, Flipping the Chessboard. Concept number 3. What about these flipping the chessboard concepts? Bilocation, portals, Kansas, control rooms, and Oz. Bilocation, like what Luke Skywalker did in the Last Jedi movie. But maybe not as strenuous as Luke made it appear. Did you know about the dimmer switch concept for bilocation? A low setting on the dimmer switch of bilocation would mean you would just have an energy signature, a low density of light, similar in concept to how a ghost would manifest in a 3D reality. The medium setting on the dimmer switch would be more of a manifest form, like what Luke Skywalker did. It's more density of light than the low setting, but it's not quite the hard light technology that we use for our human avatar body. The high setting on the dimmer switch would allow both manifesting and unmanifesting your avatar as a hard light technology in another realm. This primarily happens if you incarnate into that realm as a type of avatar using the highest density of light. Can't be, but somehow is. One of the ways you can bilocate is through a portal. I discovered a remarkable one on my last birthday trip, which led me to Kansas and a very special portal known as the Monument of the Rocks. Let's talk about my recent birthday trip adventure. If you remember, one of my last birthday trips took me to a stargate in Sri Lanka, where I blacked out after doing a special meditation I call a supernova. In December of 2021, I was planning my birthday trip and inquired to my highest self where I should go. I received the answer that it would be within the United States. Then I asked where. Northern US, Southern US, Eastern US, or Western US. The answer I received confused me at first. It was none of those choices. I thought about it and asked, is it the center of the United States? And it was an immediate yes. I looked at a map and saw that Kansas was the state in the center of the continental United States. I asked, is it Kansas? The answer was yes. When planning a trip like this, I look for megalithic structures, star forts, or really any interesting sites. The area known as Monument Rocks immediately caught my attention. What is Monument Rocks? It's an 80 million year old chalk monoliths that are also called chalk pyramids. They were the first landmark in Kansas chosen by the US Department of the Interior as a national natural landmark. Monument Rocks was not always exposed like it is now. It existed underwater when Kansas was covered by a shallow sea called the Western Interior Seaway. It's located near the center of the United States, and it contains both a portal and a control room. I'll explain both of what these concepts are. Monument Rocks is a public location, so it's easy to gain access to. There are just miles and miles of dirt roads you have to travel to get there. It includes a portal to other realms and a control room beneath it. It's like a giant computer. When I arrived, it was obvious that the portal was shut down and quarantined. I want to mention that I had a personal Mandela effect with the name of this location. While planning my trip, it was called everywhere online the Monument of the Rocks. After I returned home and put this episode together, now it's called simply Monument Rocks. For myself, that indicated that a timeline change had occurred. Perhaps Monument Rocks has been activated. When I arrived, it was obvious that the portal was shut down and quarantined. It was last used as a physical portal during Lemuria times, when Earth was high-dimensional, and used often when Earth was a sixth-dimensional planet, although it does appear that 150 years ago, someone had used it for bilocation travel, like Luke Skywalker type bilocation. Portal to where? To at least 1 million of Earth's realms. Did you know that our holographic Earth had that many realms? Many have heard of the 9 Norse realms, including Asgard, which is the realm where the gods lived, comparable to the Greek Mount Olympus. And Midgard, the realm of humans, which is the realm where we are said to exist. Do the children of Asgard wonder if the children of Midgard really exist? This portal acted like a hub of commerce, like a port between nations. Just like my slogan for the Quantum Businessman, the universe is based on commerce and equal exchange of energy. Besides commerce, it also has a TSA type arrangement deciding who can cross over and where. You don't just want anyone to gain access to a realm, and the control room controls that access. What is a control room in the Earth game? A control realm can be defined as territorial space where consciousness interacts with a system and has control over it. Each realm has its own control rooms. They can be of the macro scale and the micro scale. A control room can be physical or energetic. It goes beyond what we understand in technology, consciousness, mind, DNA, planets, stars, realms, land masses, islands, and continents. Earth will have one main one over the entire realm and minor ones throughout the realm. From what I read, Earth has 17 control rooms in this realm. It's a similar concept to the Dharma Initiative underground stations from the TV show Lost.
The room we're standing in was constructed years ago over a unique pocket of electromagnetic energy. That energy connects to similar pockets all over the world. The people who built this room, however, were only interested in one.
The island.
Yes, the island.
Advanced civilizations like Atlantis and Lemuria created control rooms with advanced technology, like when Ben from Lost turns the wheel at the island's control room and moves the island. How do control rooms operate? They operate like a missile silo with 2 keys where more than one person has to agree. Whatever is agreed upon should be aligned with Earth's true will. However, negative factions and those that have invaded Earth had taken over control rooms for thousands of years, creating negative outcomes for the planet. This is ending as control rooms come back into balance. What could a control room do? They can influence or directly change things on the surface. This includes everything from the weather to wars. If you feel the pull to visit Monument Rocks in Kansas, here is what I recommend about the portal. When you arrive and are at least 30 feet away, hold your hand in front of yourself, but place your gaze on the portal for a few seconds, then focus your gaze back onto your hand. You'll feel a snap in your mind, which is centering you in time and space. This technique is called spatial referencing, and you can actually use it whenever you need to bring yourself into balance quickly. My only caution is that the faraway object you first focus on needs to be inanimate, like the rock formation. It should not be another person or animal because they are not solid in time and space. Approach the portal, and you'll find to the left on either side of the portal, about 5 feet from the edge, an indentation in the chalk rock. By the way, it doesn't matter which side of the portal that you use. Place your hand in that indentation for a minute or so, or until you feel you're finished. It's like showing your passport to the TSA official when traveling. Do a short meditation, or even an out loud statement, then walk through the portal, and leave the rest up to your higher self. You may not notice anything, but one or more of your light bodies might be off on an adventure that will have positive effects for you in the realms you visit. Where you are allowed to travel is based on decisions of councils in each realm related to what they want to do and what they will trade, as well as their intentions. An interesting thing about this portal is that it is possible that it could become an actual Stargate for physical travel. But for that to happen, it will require much more energy than it currently has. Can't be, but somehow is. Besides an actual portal, your avatar DNA may also hold the key, the cipher, to unlock for you the ability to enter different realities. An example of this would be L. Frank Baum. Frank Baum was an American author best known for his children's books, particularly The Wonderful Wizard of Oz and its sequels. He wrote 14 novels in the Oz series, plus 41 other novels. Let's talk about the Earth realm known as Oz, because when it comes to Kansas, many people associate it with the Wizard of Oz. Something interesting about Frank Baum is that his books, which were written in the early 1900s, provided the concepts of television, laptop computers, cell phones, and augmented reality, where you could wear special glasses and see the truth of what people are, like that movie They Live.
Our ideal of vision.
Excuse me.
Just survive.
You know, you look like your head fell on the cheese dip back in 1957.
When looking at his DNA in the Akashic Records, I can see that Frank Baum had access to the land of Oz, which appears to be an actual Earth realm, of which his most popular stories and the famous movie, The Wizard of Oz, were based on. Could Oz have been based on an actual Earth realm? Could Oz be an actual reality filled with magic, mythical creatures, and even an Emerald City? Instead of munchkins, could they have been dwarves? A land of good witches and wizards and wicked witches and wizards. What about lion people? Could Frank Baum have dreamed about Oz? Could he have bilocated there? Could he have lived an entire life there? Could the symbology of a tornado taking Dorothy and Toto and their entire house to Oz be a symbolism for a vortex or portal or whirlpool into another Earth realm? I think that the movie The Wizard of Oz could have its own Symphony of Realities episode with all of the many Mandela effects people have been discovering.
Take special care of those ruby zippers. I want those most of all. Now fly! Fly!
The biggest Mandela effect for myself in The Wizard of Oz is that now the Scarecrow carries a gun.
I'd turn back if I were you.
As someone who's watched that movie many, many times as a child, I never remember that scene where the Scarecrow carried a gun in the haunted forest. What about you? Did the Scarecrow always pack heat? Perhaps this Mandela effect shows a timeline of freedom to carry a gun to defend yourself, possibly even to defend yourself from a government. No trip to Kansas would have been complete without a visit to the Oz Museum. Besides wax figures of all the main characters, the Oz Museum is filled with movie artifacts and memorabilia about Frank Baum and everything wonderful about Oz. My recommendation is that after you visit the Oz Museum, you head next door to Toto's Tacos and order Uncle Henry's Nachos. If you can eat the whole thing, you won't be in Kansas anymore. Can't be, but somehow is.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Concept number 4. What about this flipping the chessboard concept? Astronaut Virgil Gus Grissom and Topsy the elephant. In this segment, I'd like to give you an update on astronaut Virgil Gus Grissom and also Topsy, but I'll start with Gus. For those of you that don't know who Gus Grissom was, he was the astronaut selected by NASA to be the first man to land on the moon. Not Neil Armstrong, but Gus Grissom. However, he and 2 of his fellow crewmates died tragically when a fire erupted in his spacecraft in 1967 in Cape Canaveral on the launch pad.
At 1:19 in the afternoon, Gus and his crew prepared to be locked into a spacecraft filled with pure oxygen. To clear the cabin of any contamination, the capsule would be pressurized, pumped up 15% above normal. A spark flashed.
You could hear somebody yell, "There's a fire." Somebody else yell, "Get me out of here." And then it was quiet.
Trapped by the hatch, Gus and the crew had no hope of escape. Fueled by pure oxygen, Apollo 1 became a blast furnace. It would be 8 long minutes before the hatch could be opened. For Grissom, Chaffee, and White, the end came in 14 seconds.
One of my videos titled Moon Angel tells his story, including how the Nazi influence at NASA may have had something to do with the hatch. Gus had serious doubts about the new Apollo command module.
While Gus had complete confidence in his crewmates, he had his doubts about the new Apollo command module.
He thought the spacecraft was a lemon. Gus had picked up a California lemon, and I live in California. I know their lemons are big, and hung one on the side of the spacecraft, meaning it was a lemon.
A lot of people have said, well, why didn't he just tell him, I'm not going to do this? But that's not the way of somebody that's trying to work and correct things. You stay with it and you try to make it work. That was the only way Gus would have handled it. I mean, he wouldn't walk away from a problem like that.
I'll leave a link to my video titled Moon Angel below, where I describe his death and his fellow crewmates as a sacrifice in fire to a false alien god. Gus Grissom came up when I was planning my 2021 birthday trip to Kansas in a surprising way. Before my trip, I wound up talking to a recommended local Kansas historian about some of the places I wanted to visit. I spoke with her on the phone for about 30 minutes when her husband suddenly picked up the phone and asked me if I had ever heard of Virgil Grissom. I said, Virgil Gus Grissom, the astronaut? I thought, wow, this is interesting, and I feel a synchronicity coming on. I told him yes, and that I was very familiar with his story. He said, well, if that's the case, you need to check out the Liberty Bell 7, the capsule he orbited the Earth with 3 times. He told me they recovered it from the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, and it's on display at the Cosmosphere Museum in Hutchinson, Kansas. How did the Liberty Bell wind up at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean? When it splashed down after its historic flight, this is what happened.
Gus bobbed up and down in the sealed spacecraft, recording switch positions in his log as he waited for the recovery helicopters to arrive.
So he was sitting there when he heard a dull thud and saw the hatch skip off across the water. And immediately, of course, water started gushing into the spacecraft. Gus said he never moved as fast as he had in his life in getting out of the Liberty Bell, and it immediately began sinking under the waves. The recovery helicopter managed to hook on to Liberty Bell 7 and actually started pulling it out of the water. But unfortunately for the helicopter pilot, he received a warning light on his engine panel that there was going to be an engine failure on his helicopter, and so he had to cut loose the Liberty Bell 7, and it sank to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean.
More than 30 years later, it was finally located on the ocean floor. I wanted to mention that in my old timeline, with all the research I'd done on Virgil Gus Grissom and the Liberty Bell 7, I had never heard that they had retrieved it from 3 miles down on the ocean floor. So for myself personally, the retrieval of the Liberty Bell is a huge Mandela effect. When I watched that video of the Liberty Bell 7 being lifted out of the ocean, I just clapped and cheered and felt overwhelming emotions. I knew that this totally random comment by that historian's husband convinced me that I needed to add the Cosmosphere to my birthday itinerary. By the way, nothing is random or coincidence in the hologram. It's all synchronicity. Everything. As soon as you walk into the Cosmosphere, the Liberty Bell 7 is one of the first things you see. You don't even have to pay anything to see it. It's right there when you walk in. It has a frequency that radiates the consciousness of Gus Grissom. Can't be, but somehow is. If you think about it, that tiny capsule, which I can't even believe he fit into, completely absorbed his frequency. It's said that you didn't ride in that spacecraft, you wore it.
In the early morning of Tuesday, July 18th, Gus climbed into Liberty Bell 7. The one-person spacecraft was so cramped that it was said that you didn't ride in it, but you wore it.
The Liberty Bell 7 took on his consciousness energy. It vibrated with his frequency. This concept makes sense when you think about how someone that loves you might want to wear your clothes, like a girlfriend wearing your favorite sweatshirt. Your scent, your frequency is literally absorbed into the clothing. What happened when I approached the Liberty Bell 7? I could feel Gus and all the emotions he had while being in that capsule high above our planet. He then provided me with a gift. Inside that capsule, his higher self kept a secret in a higher dimensional frequency band. It was codes and information regarding the Nazi involvement at NASA and also the other timelines where the Nazis had gained worldwide control. It included aspects of their involvement with NASA, the secret space program, and something called the Dark Fleet. Science fiction writer Philip K. Dick wrote a book titled Man in the High Castle, which talks about a timeline where the Nazis won World War II. It was later turned into a television series which explores the multiverse and parallel timelines. In this television series, the Nazis discover how to visit parallel worlds through portals and steal their scientific secrets and military innovations.
We've made great progress since your last visit, Reichsmarshal. The knowledge we are gaining surpasses our wildest expectations. Please. We've sent a series of teams of Feldkommando agents through the portal, as you instructed, and we have been able to mine that world for scientific innovations, its military secrets.
We are draining the old world of all technological and cultural intelligence. And not just from America. We now have teams in Europe and Asia, too. And they don't even know we're there. However, they are improving their nuclear capabilities.
They're advancing.
Yeah. The Americans and the Russians.
Do they know about our world?
Beyond a few academic papers, they have no sense of the multiverse, no grasp of portal technology.
Oh, whoever wrote those papers seem to have a pretty advanced understanding of quantum mechanics.
We are taking care of it. This way, Reich Marshal. I have something to show you.
What are we looking at?
A map of the multiverse. This is our world. And this is the alternate world we've reached. So like our own.
Except the Axis lost the war.
Which is why it's critical we understand it. But soon we'll reach other worlds. And more beyond that, harvesting the intelligence of world after world.
Would the Nazis want to conquer our world as we vibrate higher to the golden timeline? Did the Nazis have a secret program involving anti-gravity aircraft, which we would classify as UFOs? What really happened after World War II? Did many of the Nazis relocate to South America?
In 1945, a sudden surge of UFO sightings occurred in South America. Had the Nazi engineers found a new base?
There were thousands of sightings in the years immediately following the war, much more so than in North America, which indicates the possibility that the Nazis flew to South America and continued operating their craft from their bases there.
The president of Argentina, Juan Perón, approved 1,000 passports for Nazi scientists and engineers. War criminals Klaus Barbie and Adolf Eichmann were both traced to South America. Reimar Horten, Nazi flying wing pioneer, moved to Argentina in 1948. Ever since, the trail of UFO sightings has grown throughout South America.
What about those stories about the Nazis building a base in Antarctica?
There have been stories that the Germans were attempting to build a permanent colony in Antarctica. We know for sure that there was the 1938-39 German Antarctic expedition, which did claim a chunk of Antarctica for Germany, and that the Germans did excel in building secret underground bases.
Did the Nazis build a secret underground base in Antarctica? Could that have been the reason for the U.S. Navy's Operation High Jump, led by Admiral Byrd, where in 1946, a military operation, the largest armada ever, was sent to Antarctica?
The Antarctica conspiracy is reinforced by U.S. naval operations in the region in 1946, just a year after the war's end and a year before the Roswell crash.
Operation High Jump was one of the more amazing pieces of this story. Admiral Byrd, America's most famous Arctic explorer, led an expedition to the South Pole in 1947. It was the largest armada ever sent to Antarctica. 13 ships, 4,700 men. The armada included a brand new state-of-the-art aircraft carrier, a submarine, several destroyers, dozens of aircraft, fixed and rotary wing aircraft.
Officially, High Jump's mission was to assess how American troops would cope if the Soviets invaded through Antarctica. Unofficially, Admiral Byrd had also been asked to investigate any Nazi presence in the region.
Operation High Jump was outfitted for 8 months worth of supplies. They could have been in Antarctica doing their thing for 8 months, and they were only there for 16 weeks, and then packed up and hastily left with no explanation ever given as to why the sudden aborting of the mission.
Rumors quickly sprang up. The Armada had run into serious trouble, come up against something or someone. Admiral Byrd's comments helped fuel the controversy.
Afterwards, Byrd apparently said some very strange things to reporters on the way back, including that the United States needs to be prepared to fight a war against aircraft that can fly from pole to pole at tremendous speeds. This is taken as evidence that he did indeed run into Nazi disc aircraft that outperformed his guys, and that the sudden turning tail and running is taken as evidence that there was some sort of a confrontation, some sort of a battle.
Is it possible that the Nazis have access to spacecraft that could fly from pole to pole at tremendous speeds? If they did, who helped them create this advanced technology? Perhaps an off-world ET race? In the Moon Angel video, I talk about the Nazi involvement with NASA, primarily with a US government program called Project Paperclip. What was Project Paperclip?
Nazi scientists, some of them tied to war crimes including horrific concentration camp experiments, brought to the U.S. in a secret program to advance American security interests during the Cold War. It sounds like the plot of a film drama, but it actually happened, and on a large scale. The story is told in the new book, Operation Paperclip. Author and journalist Annie Jacobsen joins us now. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
So these were top scientists in the German war effort, sought out by the U.S. military as the war was coming to an end.
That's right. These were Hitler's top weapons makers, and Operation Paperclip became a classified military program to bring them to the United States. It also had a public face, so there was, on the one hand, the truth about the program kept secret, and on the other hand, the idea that we'll tell the public that these are the good Germans.
The good Germans, but they were dedicated Nazis, the ones you write about. We should say there are many, 1,600 in all, right?
Yes.
You document about 21 of them, dedicated Nazis, some, as I said, involved in horrific stuff. What they did was known, right, to the people to the Americans who were seeking them out.
Certainly to the American military intelligence officers who were interviewing them. The idea that they were involved in war crimes was really necessary to be kept secret, and that's exactly what happened. And so in the book, I think I unveil a lot of the truth about this program that has remained clouded for decades.
So give us an example of one of the figures that intrigued you.
Well, I think one of the worst case scenarios was that the United States military made the decision to bring Walter Schreiber. This was Major General Dr. Walter Schreiber, the Surgeon General of the Third Reich. He wound up at a military facility in Texas.
And doing what?
Well, during the war, Dr. Schreiber had been involved in the vaccine program for the Reich, which sounds like a nice program, but it was actually a program to work on protecting German soldiers from these biological weapons that were also being manufactured. So he was involved in war crimes and concentration camps.
Now, in the past, many tyrants and governments wanted to do it, but nobody understood biology well enough. And nobody had enough computing power and data to hack millions of people. Neither the Gestapo nor the KGB could do it. But soon, at least some corporations and governments will be able to systematically hack all the people. We humans should get used to the idea that we are no longer mysterious souls. We are now hackable animals.
Project Paperclip included 1,600 Nazis to enter the US military complex and space program. It also included the famous Nazi rocket scientist named Wernher von Braun.
The very famous case is, most famous is Wernher von Braun.
Yes, he came here. He was the head of our rocket program and brought 114 fellow V-2 rocket makers with him. And this program, again, had a very beneficent face. Only now do we know the facts are very different about what those scientists were involved in at the end of the war in what was called the Nordhausen slave labor factory. Deep in the tunnels, you had concentration camp prisoners building the V-2 rockets.
So in a case like that and others where we know that they did accomplish things for the U.S. when they came here, then the question, and you write this, does accomplishment cancel out past crimes?
That, I think, is the conundrum of Operation Paperclip. And I hope that people come to their own conclusion about that, because certainly the idea that you would excuse some of this horrific behavior during the war becomes, that big moral question.
Von Braun worked for the U.S. military starting in 1945, and in 1960, he became the director of the Marshall Space Flight Center in Alabama, which became known as NASA. As you may realize, if Gus had been exposed to the Nazi influence in America's space program, if he had been exposed to the off-world race that was assisting the Nazis, if he had visited an underground secret base with advanced spacecraft in development, perhaps even had access to information that was not public, it would have been very concerning to him. In that Moon Angel video I made, I explained how the Akashic records indicated that it was the Nazi presence at NASA which sabotaged the spacecraft at Cape Canaveral, which killed Gus and his 2 crewmates when it ignited in fire. A fire sacrifice to an alien god. So, from my highest self to Gus's highest self, thank you, and I'm on it. Myself traveling across the United States to get that information from Gus was a brilliant chess move on his part. I certainly never saw that coming. It was totally unpredictable. Perhaps the Nazis in an off-world negative ET race they were working with, based off predictive models, felt that Liberty Bell 7 at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean with its secrets was safe. All about the chess moves, especially the unpredictable ones. Can't be, but somehow is. What about Topsy the elephant? Yes, she is busy and talks to me almost every day. For those of you who don't know, Topsy is an elephant who was electrocuted to death in 1903 in Coney Island, New York, which was filmed by Thomas Edison's film company. When she died, her consciousness entered the New York City electrical grid system, which was a calculated chess move by Topsy. Consciousness in electricity? It's a similar concept to what the movie Tron portrayed in entering a mainframe computer. The heroine of that movie, named Cora, reminds me so much of Topsy. Topsy is a kind of superhero with a big heart filled with bravery, existing within an electromagnetic dream space, a matrix within a matrix, a hologram within a hologram, a pocket dimension within a pocket dimension, a dream within a dream. Can't be, but somehow is. I'll leave a link below to the Symphony of Realities episode where I talk about Topsy in more detail. What's new with Topsy? A lot. She's been quite busy and her consciousness has traveled beyond the electric grid system and even the internet. One of the recent messages from Topsy in November of 2021 is that she had been able to enter nuclear reactors. When I asked her, how many nuclear reactors? She told me all of them. I asked her, how many? And she specifically said 440. I didn't think that there were that many active nuclear reactors around the world, so I looked it up. Yes, there are about 440 active nuclear reactors operating today. Every time I get random information like that, which verifies to be accurate, that I had no idea about, I just say, wow, why is Topsy involved in nuclear reactors? It started in Germany. She said that a group had hacked into a reactor and was attempting to create a meltdown. She was able to stop that scenario, but then discovered that other reactors had been compromised. With her unique skill set and some time travel assistance, she was able to reverse those timelines from manifesting. Later, I got an image of an elephant in space, like an astronaut doing a spacewalk. I wondered what that meant, and she told me she is also now able to travel into the satellite systems around Earth. The next day, November 15th, 2021, on the news, this was reported.
Earlier today, the Russian Federation recklessly conducted a destructive satellite test of a direct ascent anti-satellite missile against one of its own satellites. The test has so far generated over 1,500 pieces of trackable orbital debris and hundreds of thousands of pieces of smaller orbital debris that now threaten the interests of all nations. In addition, this test will significantly increase the risk to astronauts and cosmonauts on the International Space Station.
And that's all we got from the crew. Thanks for a crazy but well-coordinated day. We really appreciated all the situational awareness you gave us, and it was certainly a great way to bond as a crew, starting off our very first workday in space.
Russia's dangerous and irresponsible behavior jeopardizes the long-term sustainability of outer space and clearly demonstrates that Russia's claims of opposing the weaponization of space are disingenuous and hypocritical.
The Russians launched a missile to destroy one of their own satellites. Perhaps they thought that satellite had been hacked or was unresponsive to control and had to be destroyed as soon as possible. Little did they know that perhaps a certain elephant had gained access, and maybe getting into the satellite system is an important chess move that Topsy may utilize in the future. Don't worry, no elephants were harmed by that Russian missile. One last thing I want to mention about Topsy is that she had a big healing of her heart in January of 2022. She has been through so much, it's understandable that parts of her heart had become dark. Her heart was totally cleansed, purified, and healed, and now she is doing better than ever. Messages from Topsy also told me that since she got to space, she's now working with astronaut Virgil Gus Grissom. Can you imagine Topsy and Gus Grissom working together to protect Earth? Can't be, but somehow is.